Hey guys, I've got a lot of thoughts about The Wheel of Time, Season 2, Episode 7, Daes Dae'mar. So let's jump right in. I'm Lauren. This is Unraveling the Pattern. Now I have to be honest, this was probably the most controversial episode for me in Season 2 so far. I really liked some of it. I was pumping my fists a lot of the time, and then other times I was like, why did they do that? And I have to say, up until probably like the last 5 minutes, I was super on board, and then I was just very shocked by some of the things that happened. So this is going to be a little bit different than my normal format. I'm still going to go over the good, the bad, the great, the surprising, but then I'm also going to save some time for the end for spoiler theories and speculation, because this is the first episode where I feel like there's just a lot to theorize about. There's a lot of changes from the books that were interesting, and I just have some thoughts and theories. So this is going to be a review of episode 7 with spoilers just for the show, and then at the end I'll do book related spoilers and speculation and thoughts. So like the video, subscribe, and let's jump right in. You guys, I'm super tired. I'm going to do my best to do this. I might be looking over a little bit at my list as I go, just to speed things up a little bit. So here we go. First things first, the good. I liked the Swan and Moraine cold open. It was great to see that scene come to life. They were so in love. They seemed so happy, so carefree, which was probably the saddest part of this in contrast with how the episode ended. But I liked all that. It did feel a little bit rushed, but it was great to see that scene finally happen. I was very excited about that. It was really cool that episode 7 of season 2 was kind of a mirror of episode 7 from season 1. We got to see Rand's mother giving birth. It was kind of a fun little mirror that they did that. It was so good to see Lan giving Rand advice. It was really a sweet moment when Lan reached out to Moraine and said, look, I know you're treating me badly, more or less. He didn't say that, but he was kind of like, I know you're treating me badly, but have you wanted to harm yourself? Have you wanted to take your own life? I thought that was a really sweet moment. And the way he smiled after she said, no, her mission is too important, that really resonated with me. I thought that was a beautiful thing. And it felt to me kind of like a theme related to, mental health. And I thought that was nice that he was there to support her, despite the fact that she was not treating him very well. Now, I watched this episode twice because I wanted to really review it a little bit better. I felt a little rushed with last week's review, so I wanted to watch it twice. And I noticed something in my second watch. It wasn't always Matt or the actor Donal Finn who plays Matt in some of those little dream sequences he had. By the way, that dream sequence that Matt had, I was kind of on the fence about it at first. I would have probably put that in the bad category after my first watch, just because it was so out of place for me. But on second watch, I actually really quite liked it, and I'd put that in the good category. It was fun. It was different. I was a little nervous that maybe it was like a flicker thing, which I'll talk more about in my speculation section. But one of the things I noticed in there is that the actors who were in there, like drowning that person and then also stabbing that woman, it wasn't always the actor who plays Matt. It was someone else. And I couldn't tell in the version I had, because the version I watched is pretty low quality, but it almost looked like it was Paden Fane drowning the man in the first shot there. And then it would cut and it would show Donal Finn as Matt drowning that person or stabbing that woman. I thought that was really interesting. So were those past lives? Were those versions of Matt from different lives? Or were they other characters? I don't know. That was really interesting to me. Even though I was kind of on the fence about the spiked calf or, mushroom trip that Matt had at first, Donal Finn as Matt in this episode was so great. I thought he did a phenomenal job as Matt. I loved his little quips. Is this a sex thing or a murder thing? Either way, less talking line. That was so perfect and funny. I just love that. There were a few like fist pump moments that I was just like, yes, that was so great to see. One of them was when Nynaeve and Elaine captured the sul'dam. That was really exciting to see, because that was like straight out from the books, and I'd love to see that. Another thing is when Tomas said, light be with you. I don't know why, but when he said that, it was in the moment, the way the music was building, I was just like pumping my fist. I was so excited to hear those things. I really liked seeing Egwene sort of intentionally braiding her hair. Yes, the Shan-Chan have control over her, but she was intentional about braiding her hair. And I've talked a little bit about this in some of my videos, that Egwene and her hair, it's a sacred thing. It's related to her womanhood. It's related to her ability to choose to be the woman that she wants to be, and having freedom to choose whether to braid her hair or not, having the freedom to wash herself. All of those things have been really interesting with Egwene's character. In season 1, the White Cloaks kind of forced her braid out and then washed her against her will. And then in this episode, there was that creepy scene with Rena where she was sort of like forcing herself on Egwene as she washed her. And then seeing Egwene with that scowl saying, I will kill you. That was really great to me, because I said that Egwene was broken in the previous episode, and I actually don't believe that anymore. I love some of the comments that some of you posted where some of you said she's not broken. She's just bending to their will a little bit in order to kind of learn what she needs to learn until she can get what she wants. There's that spark in Egwene still. She is unbreakable. A great comment that I actually pinned on my previous video. Someone said she isn't broken. she's being forged. And I thought that was a really great line about Egwene and her character, especially knowing what comes later. Another fist pump moment that just was really great, and I felt like it was a little bit of a wink at the camera, a little fourth wall breaking moment, was when Varen met Rand for the first time. And I'm going to look over here to read it so I get the quote right. She said, "The dragon reborn. I'd say you spent long enough in Cairhien, wouldn't you?" To me, that was like, yes, he spent too long in Cairhien. Up through episode 7, he's been in Cairhien all season. Let's get him out of here. I thought that was really funny and great. And the way Varen sort of manipulated Lyanna, and that was so perfect. When Lyanna came to Swan and said to Swan, she said, "You sent me. You sent me, right?" That was such a great nod to book fans. If you know what I'm talking about, the whole "she sent me" line from the books that we talked about that for years, decades, wondering what that was all about. Okay. Moiraine getting her power back. That was a good moment. I was so glad that it finally happened. I'll be honest, I felt like it dragged on a little bit. So let's talk about some of that. Let's get into the bad. And as always, I feel like I have to clarify and say it's not really bad, just nitpicks, things that frustrated me. And on rewatch, most of these things weren't issues. I'll talk about some of them in my theory section and speculation section. But okay, so the whole Moiraine shield, was she stilled? Was she shielded? I'm so glad that was finally resolved. It kind of wasn't either. Yes, she was shielded, but it was tied. And apparently this is a thing that people don't know about in the Third Age. I was okay with that. The whole idea of the tied weaves being lost thing from the Age of Legends. I liked that. I liked how that was introduced. This is something the show does really well. They show things rather than tell. And, I'm sure we'll learn more about tied knots and tied weaves as the show progresses. The thing that disappointed me wasn't all of that. It was how it was resolved. And the reason it disappointed me is because I was expecting Swan to be the one to untie the knot. I felt like all the clues were there. Swan is going to untie the knot. Everything was set up. And Lan even told Rand, "You don't have the skill to untie this." And I'm like, yes, they need Swan. And then in the next moment, they're like, "So just cut the knot." And so then Rand just cuts the knot and they moved on. And that was what disappointed me. It was the fact that Swan was not involved in that decision. And speaking of Swan, I wouldn't say this was bad, but that last 5 minutes, and even throughout the episode, the way Swan sort of churned on Rand, the way she churned on Moiraine, that stuff really caught me off guard as a book reader. And so I had a hard time with it on my first watch. I've come to enjoy that stuff a little bit, but I still feel like that was my least favorite part of this episode, was the whole Swan versus Moiraine thing. I felt like it was kind of contrived. Some people call the Wheel of Time show a CW show. And I think that's just people not thinking very well, frankly. But I have to say that these are the kinds of moments, these sort of like fake drama moments, the stuff between Lan and Moiraine all season, this new stuff with Swan and Moiraine that felt to me like it was way out of left field. It feels a little CW. It feels a little bit drama-ish. And some of that stuff kind of rubs me the wrong way. That being said, let's get into my theories and speculation later, because I have some thoughts about this that actually make sense of it all. And I think that it's easier to kind of swallow some of these changes with some of my thoughts. I could be way wrong, but I'm hopeful. Probably besides the whole Swan Moiraine stuff, which felt wrong to me on first watch, my biggest complaint about the episode is that it's called Daes Dae'mar, which is the game of houses, and they never really referenced that, even though there was that little bit of stuff with Anver and Barthanes and Liandrin, and some of the sort of like political intrigue between the Aes Sedai, Swan, Moiraine. It wasn't really a Game of Houses episode. I just felt like the episode wasn't titled very well, especially because the Cairhienin stuff with Rand in the books and the way he influences the political landscape of Cairhien in book 2, that was just non-existent for me. That being said, I do think they've set up some interesting things with Anver's character, and I'll talk about that in my theories and speculation section. And the last thing I'll say that's, again, not that bad, but the last thing I'll say that's been frustrating, and I kind of had this realization, is all season, we've been talking about how season 2 is books 2 and 3. And related to Matt's character, it's just book 2 Matt, kind of. I mean, it's not even really book 2 Matt. It's kind of a made up story for his character because of how things went down with the actor previously leaving and them having to kind of figure out where to put his character in the story. But I kept expecting book 3 Matt, things that I won't talk about because they're too spoilery. And that never happened this season, at least not yet. And I don't think there's time now. And so I kept being frustrated with Matt's storyline. But now realizing that, book 2 Matt, he's pretty much on the sidelines the whole time. He's not really an important character until book 3. I feel better kind of realizing that. Like, we're going to still get the Matt that we all fall in love with. But I think non-book readers in particular, they're probably like, why do book readers like Matt? He's kind of a nobody. And I kind of agree. Like, he's kind of been put on the back burner. That being said, some of the things with him in this episode were really fun. So let's get into the great and the surprising. There were some really great moments in this episode, just like every episode. I think certain elements of each episode does get better and better. As I say, this episode felt a little bit rushed in the end, and some of the decisions they made at the end kind of like shocked me. Nynaeve and Elaine meeting Loial was just perfect in every way. I love when Nynaeve was like, yeah, his name sings in your ears. Let's get on with it. Like, that was really funny stuff. The way that Loial was so respectful to Elaine, the way that Elaine just kind of like smiled as he bowed to her and was polite about it. Like, that really worked for me. I already talked about this a little bit, but Egwene's defiance really got to me. Seeing how powerful she's becoming, how she's being pushed, her power is stretching, was really great to see. Swan using fish metaphors. She used at least 2 different fish metaphors. I loved hearing that. And that little wink to the camera where Swan said, "We would have been so much better off if you were a girl." I thought that was funny because I feel like that's the kind of thing that's going to get certain haters of the show just like riled up. And I thought that was really funny. It's true. If the dragon had been a girl, they would have been better off. But he was never going to be a girl. People who are like, oh, the show is messing with all of that. Rand could have been a girl. Like, I don't necessarily believe that. Probably the most shocking and exciting moment was seeing the Aiel maidens and Avienda. I think when she did her little hand gestures, her maiden hand talk, which I'll talk more about in my breakdown, I think that she was saying, I have toe. And then the way that her sisters, not really her sisters, but the other maidens of the spear, Bane and Chiad, when they were like beating her up and Perrin's reaction and Hopper barking, like all of that was very surprising and exciting to me. By the way, someone told me in my comments that wolves don't bark, but I looked it up. Wolves do bark. So it's okay that Hopper barks. Honestly, I was surprised that when Avienda was being beat up and meeting her toe, I actually got teary. And it wasn't because I didn't want to see her beat up. It was because it felt like they got the Aiel culture right. And that was very exciting to me. And I actually thought that moment was very impactful. I really, really loved that moment. Another surprise was that Matt just made it to Foam. It's like he was in Cairhien, then suddenly he was in Foam. That actually kind of bothered me. But knowing the things I know about the books, he asks Lanfear, how did I get here? And she's like, I have secrets or whatever she said. Like, knowing how he got there and knowing that that hasn't intentionally been revealed yet, like, I'm okay with that. It just felt so abrupt. And I guess I'm a little disappointed that Matt didn't go with Rand through the Waygate at the end of the episode. I just wanted to see Matt choose to go into a Waygate as a way to kind of make up for his mistakes from season 1 where he chose to stay behind. But, it was very surprising to me that they suddenly were like, okay, Matt's in Foam now, especially because there was also all this setup with Matt where it was like, Min, you need to take him to Cairhien. He needs to leave with the dragon, blah, blah, blah. And then, we'll just whisk him away to Foam because we can do that. Like, that kind of bothered me. But it was surprising. And then, just a couple other things that were surprising to me. Swan and Moiraine, I've already kind of talked about this, but it was surprising. But I also realized that, Moiraine doesn't trust anybody, maybe not even Swan anymore. Like, they've been away enough that she just doesn't know who she can trust. And that was very true to Moraine's character. Also, someone brought up in my comments something about Moiraine, because I was giving her a bit of a hard time in one of my recent videos, because I'm just like, she's not very likable. But imagine what she's been going through. She's lost her connection to the power. She's trying to separate herself from her friendships to keep people safe. She's dealing with the Dragonborn. She can't even safely go to sleep. She's like losing sleep. She's just on edge constantly. And it made me understand her a little bit more and sympathize with her a little bit more. I was also very surprised that Swan shielded Rand and captured him. And she talked about Tower Law and how they need to cage the dragon. That surprised me. I was not expecting that. It was a pleasant surprise, but definitely was not expected. And then finally, Lan meeting with Logain. That was a surprise. I loved how they kind of revealed through Logain the concept of weaves that are still there and everything. I thought that was really interesting. Okay, so my review of this episode is some things were weird. It felt a little rushed in the end suddenly. I really feel like there's some great setup moving forward going into the finale. I'm a little worried how much they have to accomplish, but I want to talk about some of those theories and speculation about what's coming in the finale. So if you haven't read the books, now's probably the time where you should step away. I'm going to be talking about some pretty big spoilers, even related to things way near the end of the series. So you really should not watch this next section. You don't want to be spoiled with some of this stuff. Thank you for watching, liking, and subscribing. And for those of you who've read the books, stick around. Let's talk about theories and speculation. There were some decisions made in season 1 that frustrated me, just like I think they frustrated everyone. And I feel like some of those decisions, while I didn't understand them, I kind of had faith that they would pay off, and a lot of them did. I feel the same way with season 2. Some of the things that happened in this episode frustrated me. But overall, I have faith that they're going somewhere with it. Related to some of my speculation, I think one of the big things they're obviously trying to set up early is the coup in the tower. They're trying to set people up against Swan. They're trying to set up Swan against others. I think that's very clear. And, rumors are that the tower coup is going to be a big part of season 3. I think that they're intentionally trying to set all that up. Now, I really hope they don't address anything in Cairhien or dealing with the White Tower in the finale. I just don't think there's time. We need to focus on the characters in Foam. Now, something that surprised me is they make it seem like Moiraine's a dark friend. She's teamed up with Lanfear. She implied to Siuan that she was stilled, but then Siuan sees her channeling, so she's like, you lied to me. And Moiraine's like, I can't lie, you know that. And I've only been honest with you. But there was something weird going on with that whole Siuan Moiraine thing, and then it occurred to me, Siuan is probably under some form of compulsion. If Siuan is under compulsion, I can be much more forgiving of almost everything that happened in this episode that I didn't love. If she's not under compulsion, then I just have to respect that they have a decision for these characters that I don't understand and that it will pay off. There's a lot of evidence to support the Siuan is under compulsion theory. When Rand looks at Siuan, one of the first things he says to her is, "You are not exactly what you seem." I feel like that was a little wink at the camera that she is not the Siuan we expect, especially, okay, the way we saw Siuan at the start of the episode with Moiraine 20 years ago and how happy and carefree they were and how loving they were, and the way we saw the two of them interacting in an intimate setting in season 1, this did not match up for me. The way she was so antagonistic towards Moiraine. Now, I know Moraine's been antagonistic too, and there was a great moment between Moiraine and Siuan in this episode where Siuan kind of broke through Moraine's wall a little bit and calmed her down. But overall, there was just something a little bit off. And this idea that it's been 6 months and you haven't done what you needed to do to train the Dragon Reborn, that felt hollow to me. It felt forced. It felt like something that's been put into Siuan's mind. That it's not coming from her, it's coming from some other influence. Maxim says at one point, I'm more concerned about Liandrin. Where did she go? You know, maybe Liandrin is the one who applied the compulsion to Siuan. And speaking of Liandrin being the one who did the compulsion, when Siuan said to Rand, it would have been better off if you were a girl, that's the kind of thing that Liandrin would say. Now, it's true, it would have been easier if the dragon was a girl, no doubt about it, for the Aes Sedai, but I just feel like that was kind of a Liandrin thing to say. And then this line from Moiraine. Moiraine said, "We each had our tasks, Siuan. I was to find the Dragon Reborn. You were to get the tower ready to support him. Support him, not cage him." And I feel like something weird is going on. I do think that Siuan is surrounded by enemies, just like Moiraine said, and I think that they are manipulating her. Could this be a setup by Ishamael from the start? I mean, this feels like the kind of thing that's, these wheels have been turning for a while. This stuff has been in motion since the Dark Friends social or before. I think that this is all a big part of Ishii and Lanfear's plans. When Lanfear shows up at the end and she says a broken Amerlin is better than a dead one, it implies to me that she knew more about what was going on behind the scenes with Siuan than she was willing to admit. Another evidence of some weird things going on where maybe Lanfear or Ishii are involved. When Rand is in the dream with Lanfear, he says something to the effect of, "I'm being held prisoner," and Lanfear says, "I know," which implies she knows about the whole plan. She knows what's going on. Something I keep asking myself is, why didn't Moiraine get visited by Ishamael in her dreams? Ishamael talks about pushing people to their limits, trying to get them to want to churn to the dark. He tied off her shield in season 1. The way he's been treating other people, it's like he wanted to manipulate her into churning to him so that he could offer her power back. And yet he never visited her again, as far as we know. That kind of felt hollow to me, unless this was his purpose all along. So my theory is that Ishamael has been pulling the strings the whole time. Lanfear says that Moiraine was pulling the strings, trying to get Rand to turn against Moiraine and all these other things. But I feel like this is kind of like big picture. Ishii is trying to mess with Moiraine, trying to get Rand to trust him more. It's about Rand. It's not about Moiraine. Moiraine's almost an afterthought to the Forsaken. I kind of already touched on this, but it seems like they're kind of trying to set up this idea that maybe Moiraine is Black Aja, like she lied about being stilled. But in that moment when Siuan kind of got knocked out by Lanfear at the end, they kind of made it seem like, oh no, Siuan is seeing Moiraine team up with Lanfear. How terrible is this? Siuan is going to think Moraine's a dark friend. I got a different impression. I feel like this is the first time where Siuan was sort of had her senses knocked back into her, that the compulsion lifted and she was like, what have I done? That's kind of the feeling I got from that scene. Maybe this is just wishful thinking. Maybe this is really the direction they're trying to take it, but that's how I justify how they did all of this. Okay, just a couple more quick theories. I think Anver is going to be combined with Colavir or Colaver, however you say her name, from the books, who's an important part of the Kyrianan nobles and everything later in the books. I think that's actually a really good thing. And Rafe kind of confirmed that Anver has a future role to play. So I'm excited to see what happens with her. Anver is not a character in the books, but I think she's being made into Colavir. Another minor theory is that big tower in Falm. Maybe Rand and Ishamael are going to fight on that tower, and that will count as the battle in the sky. I know that's kind of cheesy, but I could see something where that happens, and then there is some sort of fire that shows the coming of the dragon. But I have a hard time believing there's going to be a projection of Rand and Ishii fighting in the clouds in the same way that they do it in the book. That just feels way too cheesy to me. But we'll just have to wait and see. They have focused on that tower a few times in Falm. I feel like that tower is going to play some role in the end battle. Okay, my last theory. it's a flicker of hope, and I mean that as a pun. The flicker scene might still happen. Now, I'm holding out hope. I know it's a very small glimmer of hope, but I have this small glimmer of hope that we will still get flicker. Rafe did a Q&A this week because the WGA strike finally ended, which congratulations. And he said something about Rand wearing prosthetics. Now, that could mean a lot of different things. He could be talking about some sort of tattoo thing on his hand or a branding. I don't know. It could, the prosthetics could be talking about certain dragon brands. I don't know. But I hope that it's about Rand being like an old man. I really hope they do something with that. And he implied that Yosha, the actor who plays Rand, looks in the mirror while wearing his prosthetics. So I'm kind of like, please be related to a flicker thing. But the other glimmer of hope is we know from a promotional teaser that Moiraine and Lan seem to be alone exiting a waygate near a beach, probably in or near Foam. But Rand is not there, and neither is Lanfear. So my hope is that Lanfear kind of sends Moiraine and Lan out one way, and then she takes Rand through the ways to another waygate and says, okay, Rand, you are going to open this with the one power. And then when he attempts to do so, we get some version of the alternate realities, portal stone, flicker thing, where Rand goes through seeing different lives. That's my hope. It might not happen. If it doesn't happen, I just have to accept that. I think if I keep hoping that it happens, I'm going to be disappointed if it doesn't. So I'm just going to say, if it happens, awesome. If not, I'm okay with that too. There's still a lot to do in the finale. So anyway, these are my thoughts. I know this was kind of rambly. I usually do better with a script. I'm trying to just look at my notes and talk. So I'm kind of rambly, but obviously I'm excited. Episode 7, lots to discuss. What were your thoughts about episode 7? Are you as excited for the finale? Are you nervous about the finale? I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous. I hope they knock it out of the park. I hope they really stick the landing. Can't wait to find out with all the rest of you next week. So until next time, let the dragon ride again on the winds of Prime.